Hi friends, today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So we have to go back to factoring, remember how to do that. First thing we're going to talk about here is a zero product property. If we have, let's say, three numbers that are multiplied together and the answer is 0, that means one of those numbers has to be 0. In order to get 0 when you're multiplying, one of the numbers has to be 0. If we have factors that are equal to 0, like this x times x plus 2 equals 0, that means either x would equal 0 or x plus 2 would equal 0. If we solve this equation, we would get x equals -2. So the solutions to this is either x equals 0 or x equals -2. So if we have something like this that's already factored, x minus 9 times 5x plus 2 equals 0, the zero product property tells us that if two numbers are multiplied to be 0, either the first factor equals 0 or the second factor equals 0. And then we would just solve those two equations. So either x would equal 9 if we solve that equation, or x would equal -2/5 if we solve the 5x plus 2 equals 0 equation. So let's look at some examples here. X plus 7 times x plus 8 equals 0, which means either x plus 7 equals 0 or x plus 8 equals 0. We'll solve both of these. So our first equation, x equals -7, or our second equation here, x equals -8. Let's look at another one. 4k plus 5 times k plus 1 equals 0, which means either 4k plus 5 equals 0 or k plus 1 equals 0. So solving these, we'll take 5 from both sides. So 4k is -5. Dividing by 4. K is -5/4. Or take 1 from both sides. K is -1. So that means if we plug in -1 into our original equation, or we plug in -5/4 for K into our original equation, we will get 0 back. All right, let's factor some. So we can see our steps here. First one, get all the terms on the same side, factor, set the factors equal to 0, and then solve for x. Our first step is done for us. All the terms are on one side. So factoring this, a is 1, b is 16, c is 64. So a times c is 64. We're looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give us 64 and add to give us 16. Since the top and the bottom are both positive, our two side numbers are going to be positive. And if we look at the factors of 16, 8 and 8, the factors of 64, 8 and 8 are the two numbers that will multiply to 64 and add to 16. So that means x plus 8 times x plus 8 equals 0, and now we split it up. We're on step 3 here. X plus 8 equals 0, or x plus 8 equals 0. Because these are the same factors, we're going to get x equals -8 for both answers. So x equals -8. This is one that only has one solution. All right, let's look at the next one. Step 1 says gather all the terms on one side. It needs to be equal to 0. So I have to move this -20 by adding it to both sides. So now I get x squared plus 9x plus 20 equals 0. So now a is 1, b is 9, c is 20, a times c is 20. So I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me 20 and add to give me 9. Since top and bottom are positive, the two side numbers are going to be positive. And if we look at the factors of 20, 4 and 5 are the numbers that are going to add to give us 9. So x plus 4 times x plus 5 equals 0. So either x plus 4 equals 0 or x plus 5 equals 0. Taking 4 from both sides, we get x equals negative 4, or taking 5 from both sides, we get x equals negative 5. So again, if I plug either negative 4 or negative 5 into my original equation, it would make it true. All right, this one, let's get all the terms on one side. Take 64. Notice we don't have any like terms on the left, so it's just x squared, take away 12x, take away 64 equals 0. So now a is 1, b is negative 12, c is negative 64. So a times c is negative 64. And I'm looking for two numbers then that will multiply to give me negative 64 and add to give me negative 12. Since the top and the bottom are both negative, that means we have a positive and a negative factor. And in this case, since we're adding to negative 12, our negative number is going to be our bigger number. So now we're looking for two factors of 64 that multiply to give me 64. Remember, we're ignoring the signs now. Multiply to 64 and subtract to give me 12. Those two factors are 4 and 16. We said the bigger factor has to be negative, so negative 16 and positive 4. So x plus 4 times x take away 16 is 0. So either x plus 4 is 0, or x take away 16 is 0. And then solving these equations, we get x is negative 4, or x is positive 16. All right, this one will add 7 to both sides. Again, there's no like terms, so just 7r squared, take away 14r, plus 7 equals 0. If we look at the factors, 7r squared is 1 times 7 times r times r. 14r is 2 times 7 times r. And then 7 is 1 times 7. So I have a GCF of 7 here. I can take 7 out of each of those. So now I have 7 times r squared, take away 2r plus 1. Remember, whatever is the GCF goes on the outside. Whatever is left over goes on the inside. That's how I got those numbers. So now I have to factor r squared, take away 2r plus 1. In this case, a is 1, b is negative 2, c is 1. So a times c is 1. So now I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me 1 and add to give me negative 2. The top is positive, the bottom is negative, which means the two sides are going to be negative. So now ignoring all signs, I'm just looking for two numbers that multiply to 1 and add to 2. Well, the only options there are 1 and 1. So we have 7 times x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals 0. We only set the factors equal to 0 that have variables or letters with them. So I'm not going to say 7 equals 0. I'm just going to say x minus 1 equals 0 or x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals 1. I don't have to technically do both of these because they're the same, but they would both give me x equals 1. All right, that's all we're going to do for this day. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.